Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
Well, as I've said many times before, the war on drugs is really a war of drugs, with our government supplying it as well as using law enforcement against it. The same thing is true of the war on terror, of course. It really is a war of terror, with our government running both sides. It's so obvious that mainstream media can no longer escape it. We have Dennis Kucinich as well as Rand Paul talking about how we were going to be Al-Qaeda's air force in Syria. But of course, it goes far beyond that. Al-Qaeda was created as well as funded and trained by the U.S. government and continues to be so even today. Now, the New York Times is pointing out that the U.S. is giving Al-Qaeda millions of dollars. They say the U.S. government says it has given Al-Qaeda millions of dollars largely because of poor oversight and loose financial controls. There you go. That's a way to help them escape. See, that way they could admit what is eventually going to come out anyway and say, it wasn't malicious, it wasn't a conspiracy, it was simply incompetence. Look, the poor oversight and the loose controls are on the part of the American people who allow this gang called the CIA to run roughshod over everyone. And this is really CYA, cover your assets, for the CIA. As Kurt Nemo points out, details of the money transfer supposedly showed up in the papers of Osama bin Laden, who was, according to the official story, killed in 2010. They say that he was concerned that all of this cash that he was getting was perhaps contaminated with poison or radioactive contaminants. They were paying Osama bin Laden. He was their agent. And as he points out, this is from the Inspector General for Afghan Reconstruction said, I am deeply troubled that the U.S. military can pursue, attack, even kill terrorists and their supporters, but that some in the U.S. government believe we cannot prevent these same people from receiving a government contract. Look, Al-Qaeda is a government contractor. It couldn't be more obvious. We've been saying this. Many people are saying it. You can't escape it. You can only try to spin it and say that it's incompetence, but it isn't. Going back to Kurt Nemo's article, because he has an excellent article about this, analyzing what the New York Times is putting out there in a controlled release. He says, as Sam Muho states, it's not religious sectarianism or the Wahhabist drive to execute apostates under the banner of ISIS that's the problem. Rather, it is the hegemonic and imperialistic designs of the NATO governments who have on record worked with Saudi Arabia and Qatar to use Islamic extremists throughout the Middle East as their Swiss Army knife of destabilization, to reorient the Middle East into their interests. And of course, the same NATO forces did this with Gladio in Italy and elsewhere in Europe, using communism as the foil. Now we see the details of it coming out again, yet again. We've seen this exposed many times. And as we have pointed out, as Robert David Steele has pointed out, as Judge Napolitano has pointed out, every one of these domestic terrorist incidents have either been false flags or they have been patsies who have been brought in by the FBI just so they could catch them at the last minute and scare people about the possibility of terrorism. Now we see how one of these was done. This is the sting, how the FBI created a terrorist. Now this is a man named Oz Makak, 25 years old. This was back in January 7th, 2012. He went into a Days Inn in Tampa, Florida, and filmed what the FBI would later call a martyrdom video. However, he was not a terrorist. He was somebody who was profoundly mentally disturbed. As they point out in the research, he was only a terrorist in his troubled mind and in the minds of ambitious federal agents. The government could not provide any evidence that he had connections to international terrorists. He didn't have his own weapons. He didn't even have enough money to replace the dead battery in his beat-up green '94 Honda Accord. The Intercept points out that he was a target of an elaborately orchestrated FBI sting that involved a paid informant as well as FBI agents. This went on for 3 months. The FBI provided all of the weapons. They gave him the supposed car bomb that he had allegedly planned to detonate. They even paid for his taxi so that he could get to where the FBI needed him to go. And psychiatrists say that he was deeply disturbed. In other words, he only became a terrorist after the FBI held his hand every step of the way, probably running the cameras for him as well. But of course, we have to surrender our freedoms and due process to protect ourselves from these terrorists. Let me tell you who the real terrorists are. The real terrorists are our own government and people in the FBI who did what allegedly happened to this Portland man who is now suing the FBI. He says, this is a Guardian story, "I was tortured in the United Arab Emirates for refusing to become an FBI informant." Now, he was part of a mosque. They have tried to set up other members of the mosque, at least 9 of its members. He was essentially set up by putting him on a no-fly list. Then they tried to turn him into an informant. When he refused, they rendered him to the United Arab Emirates, where they kept him for 109 days and tortured him as they tried to pressure him into becoming an informant. He finally made it back to the U.S., and he is now suing the FBI.
Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfowarsLife.com oil of oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients, extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules. You will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfowarsLife.com. That's InfowarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.